My name is Michael Crosby. I'm a presidential candidate. I'm addressing the League of Women Voters. I believe I addressed the League of Women Voters in 2005 to 2008 several times. Also, I addressed them between 2011 2012, respective to my campaign designs for running for governor in California at that time and the presidential layout. Now, respectively, I've been doing enormous work in economic modeling over the past several decades. The understanding that the modeling systems that effectively I was designing would deal with AI-assistive tooling, basically, whereas an analyzation and understanding would automatically have a tracking system of pay differentials respective to whether or not parties were on a fair pay scale. Also, I had incorporated into this a rewards system, a bonus system, basically, to be able to give adjustments to those who had higher productivity. The respective understanding does deal with volume as well as the creative spark, creativity, and this is very important. This information, of course, would be as an assistive tooling item, becomes a very big bonus item when somebody wants to have, for instance, their individual records of job performances, where they would have both the volume and handling and understanding of materials they dealt with, as well as the initiated spark of creative new ideas, nuances, stuff like that. So this is something that is very important to having somebody have a better job performance understanding for a capability resume. Anyhow, moving forward, my aspects for mass economic modeling from 2005 to 8 were to effectively set up an investment of $4 to $6 billion a year to bring about mass economic modeling software, which unfortunately I fell upon deaf ears. It would seem I could not get forward movement in that. The aspects for moving permanent archiving forward as a national scale style item where all parties would be able to have forever archival capabilities did not reach its goal. Unfortunately, that also fell behind. There seemed to be a lack of interest in having a way to have 100% recorded information for parties, whether they are publicly sharing or private. The current election has me dealing with looking at the long-term understanding of tactics that have been deployed. At the moment, the reality and truth is that the area here that we're looking at the League of Women Voters effectively is going backwards. There are less people that are giving time addressing it. The effective, once upon a time famous debates have faded away. We have a series of understanding that strategies being utilized by political parties have gone in one direction or another. Effectively, sadly, the truth is that the Democratic Party, when you look at the last 50 years, effectively had what would seem to be a wonderful victory sequence, and then it just kind of continued to slide downhill. The overall mass report card shows a mass reduction in achievements. Even though there are many people that want to talk about a lot of achievements, the hard reality points of the big main hard points, income effectively versus buying power has dropped, which means that anyone who wants to talk about income forwarding, it's all offset by the greed factors. This means basically everybody's been going backwards. If you're talking about some equalization actually has happened in relation to males. However, the overall statistic that I like to look at is an understanding of whether or not we as a people, as a society, both men and women, are moving forward or backwards. And the reality is that the vast majority of us, 80% of us, are moving backwards. So this is not a good thing. Now, economic modeling would have been more than just enormously helpful. It would have helped give us a future understanding of the tendencies. Literally, what I was coming up with was forecasting and understanding 80 million jobs would be lost by 25, 30. And basically, this was a golden opportunity to understand that understanding the loss in these jobs ahead of time affords a new transitional option for those types of jobs. Upgrading, I found in many instances that many parties could be upgraded with a 3 to 6 week course and actually end up getting more pay. But this work, again, was not something that people thought was of importance to move forward with. I felt strongly that the government did know about the obvious understanding that automation and coming AI-type technologies was basically eliminating jobs. Many people remember the sequences of what happened as automated phone systems came into being because they could be a more efficient device. They really could be. But in many cases, they seem to be programmed more like a upstairs, downstairs device that basically was wasting people's time and deliberately entrapping people into losing more and more of their time. And today we've seen some of the most incredible versions of this with the situation of the EED in California, where we have people that, like myself, were using phones, 3 phones at a time all day long, basically, trying to get through to the right people, and it just wasn't happening. Yet we had the news media showing robo-dialers and all this different stuff. They effectively did cover that there was a tremendous problem where it was basically impossible to get through to the EDD. Yet we now know that there was a $31 billion fraud problem and that you could hit a series of buttons and it would give you money. It would send you a card regardless of your identity or citizenship or anything. $31 billion worth. So this brings about some other stuff. I would have to say, in all honesty, that people were blacklisted. All the indications are that certain people did get blacklisted. Among them myself, when I confronted them with the blacklisting, state of California, they did not seem to be very interested in actually dealing with the matter at all. In fact, as a candidate, a reoccurring candidate, when we came to the point where, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that I was owed just under the labor fund $80,000, the Secretary of State, Shirley Weber, would not give credit so that I could get on the ballot as the gubernatorial candidate. Yet at the same time, the state was demanding to order shutdown of all of my businesses, which basically some of them were gig work, they were seasonal, they would be fluctuating style businesses. All of these businesses associated with the nonprofit and archiving were shut down. This technically, constitutionally, is illegal. It's against the Constitution of the United States, and the perpetuation of this has come to the point where basically the damage that has been done has caused the loss, damage, or theft of artifacts older than the Constitution of the United States. The archiving law is literally built right into the Constitution, and articles specifically state that parties who participate in attacking or the destruction of archives basically get the death penalty. We're talking a major difference between somebody who might have, checked a book out or ran off with the book, as opposed to people who are destroying artifacts and items of historical importance that are beyond most people's understanding in some ways, high-end type artifacts. It's a completely different situation. So, this having been said, the overall investigations have spanned out more and more, with massive wrongdoing on the part of California. Effectively, elections were rigged in California. The one item that you can stick up and put on the wall is very simple. The California recall election was rigged. And people go, what do you mean by that? Well, what was rigged about it is that, for instance, I was discriminated as a candidate from getting on the ballot. And even though I brought this to legal attention to Shirley Weber, she refused to take action properly. Even though the Secretary of State's office had, for instance, the information of petitioning. As a petitioner, I would basically certify that I had witnessed people signing these petitions of various items, whatever they were, to get them sponsored to the ballot. And all of these records effectively go to the Secretary of State. So the Secretary of State would not cooperate with basically examining the fact that these records existed. Number one, a 5-minute downstairs phone call, basically, to understand that beyond the shadow of a doubt that I was in a category that was guaranteed financial compensation, with a follow-up phone call to the EDD and say, this guy claims he hasn't been paid, what's going on? He's a candidate. They refused to participate in protecting the process of elections. They refused to participate in turning over the information to make it easier for me to basically be able to try to use this as an argument, even though you basically had the EDD as a non-responsive item. This, of course, shows mass blacklisting, mass dereliction of duty. And because I'm also an archiver, because the archive deals with information pertaining to the process of elections, this would include higher items too, such as national security. There's also an independent area of technology research that's also national security related, as well as a patent and copyright area, which is independent research, which also pertains to national security. Again, many of these areas we're talking about independent work of individuals, such as myself, in which basically these are not something that is a generalized item that would be basically in record in other archives. It was the only archive that had records of this nature. So having an enormous one-of-a-kind archive for many items is of key importance, because this falls under the strictest constitutional protection items, which brings forth mandatory death penalty sentencing for parties who would involve themselves in any way causing the destruction, damage, or basically any form of attack upon an archive of this nature. It is important at this time to understand that we have a serious problem with the election. I don't think I need to mention Trump. I think it's pretty obvious what most people are going to bring out. And I'm not going to go into report card counting right now. I'm not even sure that a human being could effectively even count that report card. So what I am moving forward with is I believe that what is blatantly obvious that's on the table is that more charges are going to be filed against Mr. Trump, and that Mr. Trump is going to be going to prison. He's not going to be there. He's not going to be deemed a viable candidate. There's going to be extreme legal actions. The understanding that we now have the Julie Sue factor, the Shirley Weber factor, the AG's Office of California which works with a policy dealing with that they do not investigate government employees under any circumstance because they claim that they have to be responsible for protecting them. Well, this policy is anti-constitutional. It's an illegal policy. This means basically that if they have, for instance, an employee that is on the payroll of the Russian government or any government, that under no circumstances would they investigate this. So this means that we have a complete collapse of the basic judicial system for the entire state of California, which means that they just basically banned parties from being able to protect the process of elections. This means they've abandoned protecting the process of elections. Again, there's a very, very long list to the technicalities of how you lay out the spread pattern on this. They are all very major constitutional violations that these parties have dealt with. The tactical tableness is, again, very obvious when you deal with parties that are saying that their policy is under no circumstances would they involve themselves in investigations. Under no circumstances would they involve themselves to give disclosure to the voters of California. Under no circumstances would they protect candidates. Under no circumstances would they participate in any form of investigation to reveal that a government employee has interfered with the process of elections. Effectively, this list goes on and on and on as the mindsets of what these people are doing has a series of universal policies that are diabolically opposed to the Constitution of the United States. There are other policies that are of deepest concern in different states and even California, where basically they're saying their policies are that parties are immune from any form of prosecution. This, of course, is also a problem. There's no such thing as anyone being immune from accountability. So this brings on some very serious problems. The tactical table experiments with this stuff, basically in the early 80s, showed that even though information seemed to be discovered, now I'm going to tell you the sources are not verifiable. Sources are not verifiable because the claim is to reveal the sources would have violated national security. So we only have raw data material, in effect, that deals with the disclosure factor of what was believed to be captured as an active intent source of foreign entities such as Russia to undermine the operation of the U.S. government by infiltrating and causing policies to be changed that would basically destabilize the process of elections and protecting elections. There's quite a bit more to it than just that. So we have a problem stating that in truth that there are missing fragments of evidence partially because the archive's been destroyed. But what is not missing is the Julie Sue, Shirley Weber, current AG of California, and the material formerly also connected repeatedly to Kamala Harris. As the state of California has investigated and refused to adhere to their responsibility, but the state of Arkansas investigated, stating that harassment of a candidate was occurring, blacklisting of a candidate was occurring, that these clearly were attacks upon a candidate, that completely erroneous citations were being generated and they were interfering with the process of elections, and that these parties would be definitely prosecuted for harassment of a candidate. But California would not extradite is part of the problem. So we have to deal with the reality of these facts are all real. They're all recorded. They're still in existence. Many of them are directly in hand, or some of them were in hand in the archive. A far more comprehensive, longer-term line of material pertaining to Harris was effectively in the archives. So for parties in California to be direct participants of attacking, committing acts of war against a candidate, destroying archives which included legal evidence against certain parties of California, this, again, is a constitutional violation. This is beyond basically protecting your personal paperwork in matters of law and general archiving. This is deliberate sabotage of the process of litigating. This is, so all in all, I'm going to spare you a little bit of time and tell you, yes, there are lots and lots, hundreds, thousands of charges against these parties. And effectively, we have a breakdown. The justice system repeatedly would not respond to requests. They would state things such as, we have over 20,000 individuals bogged down doing insurrection research. So they would not respond to certain items that needed to be done. So now we're going to have a clear layout of evidence that has already been placed in the United States Archive in Washington, D.C. These items were logged in through the Secretary of the Senate. These items effectively have the evidence that will guarantee the removal from the ballot of Kamala Harris. That's going to effectively end up banning Shirley Weber from ever participating in an election again. It's going to cause her to lose her law license. The AG of California current is going to be facing some very serious charges. That remains to be seen how that will totally come out. There's a lack of communications on their part, so it's difficult to deal with people when you try to give them very generously, and I will state very, very generously, an understanding of situations and give them very generous options to communicate as human beings and to try to deal with the matter and rectify what the problems are, whether it's a Russian spy or whatever. But unfortunately, they have not participated in rational communications, nor has the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party has not participated in rational communications. So this forces a situation where I have no choice but to bring this evidence before either or both the Senate and or Congress. So as a candidate, I do not have to withdraw because other parties are involved in treasonous activity. I filed through the United States Archive, which is an official recognized way of filing to be a candidate for the presidency of the United States. These items were put into effect way, way back historically. They deal with items such as invasion, insurrection, mass rebellion. I've also decided to utilize my options respective to a candidate being allowed to file presidential candidate panel on various subjects such as treason and or other items. This effectively gives me full trial rights to put panels together that can become more than just an action board. It's not a committee. We're talking an actual panel that has actual full trial rights. This means that prosecution can also be done by the panel. We don't necessarily have to remand items away from the panel. We can remand them to an interim setup. This is a constitutional right that many people don't seem to understand. There are parties who cannot do this. If you're an insurrectionist, you are not allowed to file a presidential candidate panel. You can't do it. It's not allowed because you're an insurrectionist. So any attempt will be scrutinized. Again, a clear understanding must be laid atop the table for the clear understanding that anything that happens respective to a presidential candidate panel is going to effectively be at some point scrutinized as to whether or not the material has certain content or legitimacy. The original design of it was to spare the United States Senate from actually being constantly pestered. The same with Congress. It has double jeopardy does not apply. There are a lot of other rule sets that apply. Invasion, insurrection, mass rebellion, for specialized powers. I wanted to be completely honest, immediately getting these items atop the table so that we know where we're at, what the options are. I have chosen some chairs for the 20-chair panel spot. I have not filled all the panel chair spots yet. I am still working with material. Generally, not always, but most items will go through a 4-part system. In other words, and there's an action part system where basically it's going to be pushed forward under reason to believe. And these can be items in the first time out that literally have partial summary judgments on them. And these are items that are then pushed up to the next stage, and then possibly the next stage and the next stage. So there can be 4 stages to go through. The use of fMRI lie detectors for willing witnesses has been declared. This is to protect, again, putting this atop the table. It is key, and it is key to the importance to protect the mishandling of information, the abuse of information, the abuse of false witnessing. And this is why we have the PCPT and PCP has effectively addressed and adopted the rights of parties to utilize fMRI lie detector equipment to substantiate willing witness situations, number 1. This affords for major fragments to effectively surface that bring about a form of definitive truth that can be reinforced and further exploited by continuing the process with more calibration, continued device revisits, changes in pharmaceuticals, etc., where additional accuracy can in fact be extracted. But of certain key notes, key high point evidence recognition points, this information effectively makes a party's statement overall definitive. So this is important. If you flip this to the alternate side to say unwilling witnesses, the history of unwilling witnesses has been utilized in areas throughout the country. There are states that have done this effectively, usually on serial killers and mass murders. So the flip side here in protecting parties from false statements means that parties can be compelled to be placed into an fMRI lie detector in which they are not willing witnesses. That's a not willing witness process. That brings about a series of options straight to the top of the table. It brings about options for speed and efficiency compared to years and years of trial, the ability to put top of the table an option that is quickly viable. As for the current state with the elections, I have contacted the GSA. I am moving forward with communications to adhere to special training known as transitional training that in the past was afforded at first only to a 2-party system or 2 major candidates, of which we have a situation where I'm a Democrat. I do not have to withdraw because the other candidates have committed illegal actions. When these parties are disqualified, the situation is going to change, and I am still a Democrat. So I do not have to withdraw. There's no reason for me to withdraw. These parties will not address the criminal activity when point blank these parties were confronted with the situation. Again, they refuse to confront the truth. And I know beyond the shadow of a doubt how a willing witness fMRI testimony from myself is going to turn out. And these parties basically, I think, are probably likely in understanding that they would be unwilling witnesses and that they probably know how those sessions of forced fMRI lie detector applications would end up turning out. So this effectively brings about an understanding of the most serious nature, that we do need a smooth transition. Again, quick review. It looks, all logic would seem, that Trump is going to prison and that Kamala Harris is going to be disqualified and be going to jail and probably prison as well, as will Julie Sue, Shirley Weber, and it looks like the California current AG as well. So this is of the utmost importance to move forward with solid, top-the-table evidence. This is why key documents are provided for parties to understand, so that we will be able to work with a science-based logic constantly. That is the idea here. That is what is permanently, in my view, affixed to top the table. I'd like to move on now to some other additional items. So I am, again, a presidential candidate here, and the progression across time has had cross-logging of paperwork deposited to the United States Archive through the Secretary of the Senate. This effectively means that these parties have not been cooperating all along the way. This would be the Julie Sues, the Shirley Webers, the AG of California. There's the past activity, connectivity to Kamala Harris as her. She has multiple areas as prosecutor and AG. The situation involving the archive has now a loss of 18 broadcast mobile archive vehicles. These are RVs. 40 vehicles, I believe, is the number that we are at on the loss total due to this. This is a lot of vehicles. We're talking a lot of archive material, a lot of computers, a lot of data. Attack upon archives, again, I think I've covered it earlier, is clearly an item in the Constitution that brings about the death penalty. That's atop the table. It's atop the table the whole time here in this discussion. So I want to be upfront about what the truth is and what the situation is. Now I'd like to move forward on with some of the issues. Okay, effectively at this time, what I thought I was going to be doing with the mobile archives and the mobile computers, and then communicating to the central base, which of course, unfortunately, many of the units, the convoy, part of the convoy was basically in storage, ready to go. When activation was coming around, here comes COVID. So unfortunately, the main centers, cores, were also stored in public storage, which have also effectively been lost. So what I thought I was going to be doing at this point in time is something completely different. What I thought I was going to be doing for the special election was running as a Democratic candidate, activating at least a dozen of the mobile broadcast RVs and putting them on the freeway system with my name on the side of them and the web link, and which would gateway to many other web links. I had purchased, I believe I had about 200 domains set aside that I was maintaining or whatnot to activate into full sites. Unfortunately, instead of having those vehicles on the LA freeway system, crowded freeway systems, LA would get you about 1 million people a day, some of the same people, but 1 million people a day seeing those RVs. So for every day they were not on the road, I lost, 1 million pairs of eyes. So this is very important to understand, because what I thought I was going to be doing is activating a 24/7 addressing system as the beginning of a permanent archival setup that would be able to address people's needs from A to Z and help them further their items whatever they are, whether they were complaints, whether they were needs, whether they were anything, it was unlimited. So the difference is between the archive setup that I was setting up as opposed to just a normal chatbot that a business might have. Those are smaller chatbots that are restrictive. Effectively, what I was setting up was unrestricted, with the exception of the classified components were not going to be available to the general public. Those are specialized items. They require specialized handling. Again, very important items that have been lost and need to be immediately retrieved. I think I forgot to mention the priority to immediately retrieve data of this nature that's lost, and law enforcement doesn't not want to cooperate. So we clearly have a series of criminal matters, and all these people do is hang up the phone and say, go get an attorney, and the judges are not cooperating. The judges not cooperating is another sequence that is another area. I'm going to bring attention back to I thought I was going to be setting up the 24/7 service. Now I have almost 500 AIs I'm testing right now that I effectively want to be able to utilize to try to bring on a version of this. At the moment, there's a stopgap. For instance, League of Women Voters, you can effectively use other AI, lots of them out there. For instance, you could use OpenAI. You could effectively copy and paste your issues, your complete set of issues, for instance, and get OpenAI to help you organize all of those. You can add specific tweaks or requests, and then what you can do is copy and paste the finished result into, or the entire file set, into a PDF or series of PDFs, and you can email it to me. Effectively, this is one of the ways I was going to be setting up to be able to help facilitate people, and then have an automated system agents basically cross-handling this material. Unfortunately, due to the ongoing unreasonable conduct of various parties intruding upon the process of elections and refusing to compensate, these things are not happening on the pace that I would like to have them. There's so much damage done to the archive. We have a minimum of $2.8 billion in damage to the archive. My nonprofit financial structure system has effectively been ruined. So my income's been basically wiped out, as it was in the matrix of the nonprofits. The materials that were donated or built by me or other people, effectively, again, those are all lost. We're talking about a wide array of rights concerning that, national security, technology development, patents, copyrights, etc., that were not finalized, that were projects in motion, so to speak. So understanding $2.8 billion is considered to be an actual minimum statistic because of the complexity of other materials and other law processing that was also located in the archive. But effectively, again, if you put all of your issues, items, concerns into a series of text files, and you can use the OpenAI source to assist you with this. This can then be looked at. I can address it. I can come up with the most comprehensive addressing that anyone's ever done in history, respective to your organization. So with that, I want to point out that I do have a lot of material. There's over 14,000 tweets. Many of them lead to YouTubes. This is an enormous amount of material that is effectively available at this time. I'm adding to it on a daily basis, literally. So I would like to say that I look forward to coming up with new types of tactics that are going to work. I have a lot of stuff about economic modeling, stopping loan discrimination, permanent policy upgrading organizations' new pooling rights, unions, guilds, so forth, etc. Everything is in these websites, and I've got a lot of code that's been written on. Might be hard for people to find those. Some of those go way back, many thousands of tweets back, and to get to those references of all the code that I was publicly sharing. Basically, most all of that has been backed up. It's in existence, even though we've had tremendous cyber attacks against me, against the campaign, the archive. So at this point, I want to thank you for your time, and I look forward to future communications. You can also respond through tweets. So again, I thank you for your time. Michael Crosby, running for POTUS 2024.